Welcome to the biology branch. So we're going to be looking at living and non-living organisms. So what is biology? Biology is the study of living organisms. So we need to look at what living organisms are and what non-living organisms are. So to go further with this, we're going to be looking at some examples. We have living things and non-living things. We have put a few examples for each. So for living things, we have chickens, spiders, mushrooms, housefly, plants, and anything else which is of the kind. And we have the non-living things, which are wristwatch, pen, house, rock, and wood, and anything which is of the kind of non-living things. So we hope you're able to distinguish the difference between the two. We're going to be looking at the characteristics and classification of living organisms. First of all, we're going to look at the characteristics of living organisms. Before we go any further, let's look at the note which is written below. It says, to help you recall these characteristics, you can take their initials and create the acronym Mrs. Gren C. We have put them in order for you. So we've put the characteristics in the order Mrs. Gren C. So to start us off, we're going to be looking at movement. This is an action by an organism or part of an organism causing a change of position or place. That's pretty straightforward. Secondly, we're going to look at respiration, which is the R. The chemical reactions that break down nutrient molecules in living cells to release energy is what we call respiration. Then thirdly, sensitivity, which is the S. The ability to detect or sense changes in the environment, which is stimuli, and to make appropriate responses. Now we are on Gren. So the fourth characteristic is growth, which is a permanent increase in size and dry mass by an increase in either cell number or cell size or both. Then we go on to reproduction, which is the process that makes more of the same kind of organism. Then the next one is excretion, the removal from organisms of either toxic material or waste products of metabolism, which is chemical reactions in cells including respiration, that's metabolism, and the removal of substances in excess of requirements, that's excretion. Nutrition is the intake of materials for energy, growth, and development. So the last characteristic of all living things is a cell. So the cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all living things. So it's basically the building block of all living things. So we're going to look at those two diagrams there. The one at the top is the plant cell and the one at the bottom is the animal cell. There are lots of things that are going on there, but we'll explain them in a bit. So what I need you to identify are some of the similarities and some of the differences as we go through each and every part. So we're going to look at the functions of parts of the cell. That's what we're going to look at right now. The first part is the nucleus. The nucleus controls all activities of the cell, and it also contains the genetic material, which we call the deoxyribonucleic acid, which is commonly known as the DNA in short. It's quite a long name, so yeah, it's better if you just say DNA. So it's found in both cells. Then we have the cell membrane, and to look at the structures, we've tried to make individual diagrams for each of the parts so that you can identify them in the diagram that you see on the right. So we have cell membrane, which is the part which holds the cytoplasm together and controls movement of substances into and out of the cell. We're going to look at the mitochondria next. This is where most energy is produced during a process called respiration. The respiration we looked at previously, that's where it takes place. Then we have the cellulose cell wall. This surrounds the cell membrane in plants and provides support and protection. So it's the one that's found in plants, not found in animals. It also makes the plant cell rigid. So it's important for it to be rigid. It will be strong, sort of. It won't be weak. So we go to the chloroplasts. The chloroplasts are only found in green parts of a plant. This is why I find that even leaves are green. The reason is they contain chlorophyll, which traps light energy needed for photosynthesis. That's the reason why they have that green. That green is the chlorophyll pigment used to trap light during photosynthesis, or for the sake of photosynthesis. So we go to the next one, which is the vacuole, and it's written for plant cells. So what's in white is for the plant cells. It says it is filled with cell sap, and it contains chlorophyll, which traps light energy needed for photosynthesis, and it also stores the cell's waste products. That's also the function of the vacuole. But the main point which you may need to catch is the one that says it is filled with cell sap. But you may be wondering why we didn't include it in the animal cell on our bigger diagram, our main diagram. The reason is in blue, which says in animal cells, vacuoles are many, small and temporary, whereas in plants, vacuoles are permanent and large. So in animal cells, they're there, but they're tiny compared to the ones in plant cells. Before we look at the next two parts, we need to know what a eukaryote is. So eukaryotes are organisms with cells that possess distinct nuclei which contain chromosomes with genetic material in the form of DNA. We hope that makes sense. Then the next part is the endoplasmic reticulum. This one is divided into two, which is the smooth and the rough endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum is basically a transportation system of a eukaryotic cell, which is also involved in, oh my bad, that's a mistake. It's supposed to be protein, not proton. It's protein synthesis, especially with its subunit called the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and it's also involved in lipid metabolism. Then we have the Golgi apparatus, which is responsible for packaging and transportation of synthesized protein and lipids to their appropriate destinations in the eukaryotic cell. Then we have the ribosome. This is the site for protein synthesis. And then we have the cytoplasm, which is the site for various metabolic reactions. Now we're looking at the classification system. So classification is the grouping of organisms according to the features they share. So we have a system which is used internationally to name organisms, which is called the binomial system. The binomial system is part of 7 levels of classification. There are other classification systems which include cladistics, which is based on the RNA or DNA sequencing data. RNA is ribonucleic acid and DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. The 7 levels of classification are kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. If you look at the note which is at the far right, it says to help you recall the order and the levels of classification, you can use the words on the right in a sentence, the ones in white. The sentence will then say kings play chess on fine glass slates. So it will help you, just take the initials, and that will help you remember or recall the levels of classification, probably in your exam or when you want to use it. An international system was agreed upon, in which the scientific name of an organism is made up of 2 parts showing the genus and the species of the organism. So this system is what we call the binomial system. And for example, we have some examples to show you how they did it. The first example is Z maize, which is the maize that we eat. Z is the genus, maize is the species. Next one, Loxodonta africana. This is the African elephant. We just said elephant there, but it's African elephant. Should be, for the Asian elephant, it should be Loxodonta maximus for the Asian elephant. So Loxodonta is the genus and Africana is the species. So we have a correction to make. The Africana is supposed to have a small letter A. Then we have our last example, which is the Panthera leo. Panthera genus, leo is the species. That's for the lion. Next point is, this is the system of naming species in which the scientific name of an organism is made up of 2 parts showing the genus starting with a capital letter and the species starting with a lowercase letter. Written in italics when printed and underlined when handwritten. That was the resolution for the convention. And for example, Homo sapiens, we know this from evolution. Homo sapiens, when printed or typed, that's how it will look like. You put it in italics. And Homo sapiens there, the next one, which is underlined when handwritten, because we have many different handwritings. Many handwritings look like they're in italics, so it won't make sense. It's better if we just underline so that we are able to see that you're using the binomial system. Then the next definition is for species. So a species is a group of organisms that can reproduce to produce fertile offsprings. It's important to have the fertile offsprings because the offsprings have to also reproduce. The next point is evolutionary relationships are links that can be made between organisms sharing the same ancestry based on morphology, anatomy, and DNA. Then the next point is a dichotomous key is a way leading to the name of organism by giving descriptions and choosing between them. It's a very exciting way of finding the names, but we'll look at it in the future. So we're going to look at the 5 kingdom classification. We have the first one is the prokaryote. For example, bacteria, it's an example of a prokaryote. Then we have Protoctista, which is, for example, the amoeba. We have many examples, but an amoeba We have many different types of amoebas. Then the next one is fungi. The fungi is, for example, yeast and pin mold. Pin mold is the one you find on, you can find it on bread. Then we go for the next one, which is the fourth one, which is the plant. Plants, for example, Firns and maize. Then we have animals as well, for example, fish and lion. You see, we are Shumbafoot, so we have to give that as an example. Now we're looking at the levels of organization. The first one, organelles. These are structures found in the cytoplasm of cells, for example, mitochondria and the Golgi apparatus. Then we go to the next stage, which is the cells. These are the building blocks of organisms, which, for example, are ciliated cells and white blood cells, red blood cells, muscle cells, and the like. Then we have, for the third one, is tissue, which is a group of cells with similar structures working in harmony to perform specific functions, for example, ciliated epidermal tissue and muscle tissue. Then the fourth one is the organ. This is a structure made up of a group of tissues working together to perform body functions, for example, the heart and the leaf. Remember, plants are also bodies. Then number 5, we have the last one, which is the organ system. This is a group of organs with related functions working together to perform body functions. For example, the nervous system and the gastrointestinal tract, which we also call the GI tract or the alimentary canal, or most commonly known as the digestive system. So if you see from number 1 to number 5, we're seeing an increase in the order or the increase in size of the different levels of organization. Thank you for watching. Ke a leboge, siyabonga.